Some scientists just discovered fossils of more than 100 different ancient insect species, preserved in 300-million-year-old rocks. They also found something else they weren't expecting to find at all. But what did they discover? What was it? It's been famous since the 1960s when paleontologists first started finding well-preserved fossils there from animals that lived during the Devonian period, which was between about 419 and 359 million years ago. The fossils include fish, amphibians, insects, and arachnids. But they haven't always been this diverse, at least not on land. See, insects evolved from crustaceans like crabs and lobsters. And we think this happened sometime before the first terrestrial animals showed up about 365 million years ago. The researchers also found the oldest known spider there. Prior to this discovery, the oldest spider fossils found were around 290 million years old. And now, thanks to the new fossil site, we know that spiders were around at the same time as these other arthropods, and potentially even earlier. And what does it mean for our understanding of insects and evolution? Let's dive into this incredible story. The rocks in this area formed in an ancient lake that was probably full of hot springs. These hot springs would have provided plenty of nutrients in a generally warm climate, which could have supported large populations of insects and other arthropods. In fact, the researchers think it was a combination of these two factors: the protected ecosystem and the influx of animals attracted to the rich environment. Not just any arthropod, mind you, but a relative of both spiders and mites. To be clear, they didn't extract this DNA from an insect, but the fact that they were able to recover DNA from an arthropod this old was shocking. That allowed so much life to be preserved here and gave rise to such high diversity. This bee was 100 times younger than the spider whose DNA was just sequenced. For example, the researchers were able to use the DNA to confirm what the morphology told them: that spiders are more closely related to mites than they are to other arachnids like scorpions and ticks. It could be a doorway to uncovering the genomes of all sorts of extinct animals. So if we can find DNA in 300-million-year-old arthropods, then there's a good chance we can find it in other animals that are younger than that. Say 200 or 100 million years old, like modern crustaceans do, and that these traits evolved multiple times as different groups diverged and evolved along different paths. Studying the genetics of these arthropods will continue to shed light on this and other questions as scientists continue to analyze the newly sequenced genome. Mites may have appeared before other arachnids, like scorpions, ticks, and harvestmen. Scientists have debated the order in which arachnid groups evolved for a long time, and this fossil, along with others like it, should help settle that debate. And maybe one day we'll be able to find DNA in dinosaurs. Well, the sheer number of different insect species discovered at this site shows us just how quickly insects diversified once they left the water and started conquering the land. Now that we know that it's possible to sequence the DNA of an arthropod that is 300 million years old, we might be able to learn a lot more about the history of life on Earth. So it makes sense that we want to understand how they became that way and how they fit into the tree of life. Maybe one day we'll even figure out how they compare to dinosaurs. It's possible that the differences arose after the lineage is split. But it's also possible that the last common ancestor of all arthropods already had distinct developmental toolkits for its different body parts. But who knows what other kinds of creatures we'll find in rocks this old, rocks this old, rocks this old. If you liked this video, stay tuned for more like it. Thanks to my supporters for making it possible for everyone to keep learning. So, the researchers didn't have high hopes, but they decided to try anyway. After all, they had nothing to lose. Basically, they found that these two groups of arthropods developed in completely different ways, despite the fact that they both clearly branched off from the same ancestral group of crustaceans. That dating technique revealed the fossils were around 300 million years old. DNA can tell us a lot of things that morphology, or the physical characteristics of an organism, can't. For example, it can show us how closely related organisms are and help us reconstruct their evolutionary history. As a result, the lake would have acted as a kind of natural museum, preserving all sorts of life until it was eventually buried under sediment. The insect fossils are exceptionally well preserved down to their wings and legs. It's hard partly because we haven't found many fossils of early insects, especially ones that lived on land. This revealed that there were 108 families of insects present, belonging to 21 different orders. This blew away the previous record of 75 families found in a single fossil site from the same time period. It also brought the total number of described insect families from this time period up by over 25%. So this new collection of fossils from China is super exciting because it gives us a window into the earliest days of insects. And this is important because the preservation of soft tissue like that is really rare in fossils. The discovery of these ancient insects and the unexpected bonus find come from a fossil site in the small town in southwest China. To date the fossils, researchers used a technique called argon-argon dating on volcanic ash layers above and below where the fossils were found. This latest study focused specifically on insects, which are today the most numerous animals on Earth and make up over half of all known animal species. But exactly when and how this transition occurred has been hard to pin down. The researchers carefully cleaned and examined each fossil, and they identified each one to the level of family or sometimes even genus and species. But just finding so many different kinds of insects was the only amazing thing this fossil site had to offer. The team thinks this diversity of life may have been a result of the unusual environment where these fossils were found. What's more, this ecosystem may have been largely untouched after the animals died, because the water in the lake was likely toxic to decomposers such as bacteria. Another possibility is that the favorable environment attracted all sorts of animals, both flying and crawling, causing even more diversity here than would have been expected otherwise. All of this information was valuable, but the researchers wanted to know if they could get an even better understanding of insect evolution by looking at the actual DNA in these fossils. Extracting DNA from fossils is really challenging, especially from fossils that are this old. And what they found absolutely stunned them. They successfully extracted and sequenced the oldest DNA ever recovered from an arthropod. You see, the previous known record for DNA recovery from an arthropod was a bee from the 1990s, which yielded usable mitochondrial DNA, but no nuclear DNA. And this ancient DNA doesn't just tell us something interesting about this one particular arthropod. That's because DNA degrades faster than other types of tissues do. In the meantime, we're going to learn a lot from the DNA of arthropods, like this ancient spider. The researchers also looked at genes that control development. And this revealed that the genetic toolkit controlling body development in arachnids is completely different than it is in insects. This was surprising because the researchers expected to see more similarities between the genetic toolkits of insects and arachnids than they actually did. It might even be the case that the last common ancestor of insects and arachnids had segmented bodies with legs on every segment. So what does this mean for our understanding of evolution? What's more, the discovery of this ancient spider, plus the fact that they were able to sequence its DNA, tells us that spiders, insects, and other arthropods continue to fascinate scientists. And with good reason, they're super successful. Dinosaurs do, and seem to have been around during the time period in which the insects in this study lived. Thank you for watching.